Welcome to Kent Tonight live on KMTV. I'm Cameron Tucker. Here are your top stories on Thursday, the 27th of November. Cross at County Hall, we have the KCC leaders' blistering attack on the government's budget.
Well, I thought Halloween, had been and gone, but I think yesterday was a complete horror show.
Save Our Green Belt. Candlelit March shines light on Sevenoaks housing plans.
In terms of food security, as a country, we need all the land that we've got for farming, and it's good farming land that's going to be trashed effectively.
Everyone's welcome. Broadstairs Cafe hosts music sessions to help the elderly struggling with loneliness.
Started off the Bonkers Wednesday as a little bit for the community and to bring a little bit of joy.
But first tonight, parents should use contraception to prevent having children they can't afford. That's been one of the damning remarks made by Kent County Council leader Lyndon Kemcaron in response to the government's budget announcement. It comes as the Chancellor said that the two-child benefit would be scrapped next year, believing that the current system punishes the most vulnerable children. But the leader of KCC said the move will just be irritating to local authorities who are trying to balance the books. Our reporter George Walker spoke to her earlier on.
Well, I thought Halloween, had been and gone, but I think yesterday was a complete horror show. I think the Chancellor is hopelessly out of her depth. I think this is typical Labour politics. They think that by splashing loads of taxpayers' cash on public spending, they will somehow stimulate growth. Anybody who has spent any time in the real world, and I mean the real world outside of Westminster, will know that growth only comes from the private sector. Growth comes when you cut red tape around SMEs, you encourage people to take risks, you encourage entrepreneurs to pour their own time, money and effort into making things from the ground up. That budget yesterday was all about punishing people who actually go out to work and earn money and pay taxes, to take that money and give it to people who are not in work. Also, the illegal migrant situation is just being allowed to continue completely unchecked. The government like to boast that they're taking illegal migrants out of hotels. Great on paper. Where are they putting them? They're putting them into the private rental sector. That is going to have an even bigger effect on our already desperate housing crisis in this country. It was, in short, an absolute shower.
But don't you think things like lifting the two-child benefit cap, that's going to help people who are, in high levels of poverty? And don't you think that could help sort of alleviate some of the pressures on services for, like, maybe perhaps homelessness or general things across Kent? You don't think some of those proposals could help?
No, I think all that's going to do is really irritate the people like me who have made the decision very early on to only have the number of children that I can afford to feed, clothe, educate, give a decent standard of lifestyle to. There are so many people like me who have made that very hard choice to have one or maybe two children because that's all you can reasonably afford. Those people are going to be feeling quite annoyed that there are loads of other people out there who are not taking responsible decisions about managing the size of their family. Contraception is freely available to everybody in this country. There is no excuse for having more children than you can afford to bring up. We need to get real about this. We need to get real. We cannot keep throwing money at people who are not making the good choices.
But I mean, I don't have the stats to hand, but as far as I understand, it would lift a lot of people out of poverty, a lot of families. And also in terms of children, I mean, they don't choose to be born into a certain family, right? So it's not their fault. That's going to help their families perhaps develop more of a sort of some solidity in terms of their finances and things like that. Don't you think that would, is it not unfair, unfair on the children in this
Of course it's unfair on the children. Of course, no child asks to be born, no child asks to be sent to school without being given breakfast or in a uniform that's not clean. No child asks for that. You're absolutely right, and no, children should not suffer. But don't you think it is kinder and more sustainable to look at the root of the problem rather than just throwing money at it? We need to be asking parents, are you aware of your responsibilities as a parent? It is your responsibility to get your child up in the morning, feed them breakfast, get them clothed and get them to school on time. That is parenting 101. That is the basic duty of a parent. We need to be reminding parents, if you choose to have children, you are responsible for their welfare, for their upkeep and getting them to school.
Next, protesters brought candles and a tractor to Sevenoaks District Council to mourn what they've called the death of the area's green belt. It comes as the council plans to build more than 17,000 homes and a Premiership rugby stadium in the area in the next 20 years. Those protesting have raised concerns about transport links, infrastructure and protecting their green land, as Maisie Walker reports.
Save our green belt! Save our green belt! Save our green belt!
A greenbelt area is a designated section of countryside which is protected from most forms of development. About 93% of Sevenoaks District is a designated greenbelt area. I'm stood in one, even though you probably can't tell.
But the darkness is not stopping Sevenoaks residents from making their message clear. The district is set to maybe see 17,000 new homes built between 2027 and 2042, a plan that would require parts of their green belt to be downgraded to a grey belt to make room for the development. On Tuesday, members of the community held a procession to protest the plan.
We're very concerned about the overdevelopment of the area, the demands it'll put on the infrastructure. We had a very long time where the main road was shut off permanently while they rebuilt the sewerage water pipes. So we're very concerned that the infrastructure is not there.
In terms of food security, as a country, we need all the land that we've got for farming, and it's good farming land that's going to be trashed effectively. It's good grazing, and it's also good arable fields that are being developed. And suddenly, on my little patch, 600 homes going through, it's taking out a huge amount of that area.
They began at Sevenoaks Station and marched to the District Council's headquarters on Argyle Road. They held candles for Mourn the Greenbelt outside the council's meeting.
Our campaign today is going to be a vigil hopefully that's not going to come true. All the candles represent are saving the green belt. We want to save it. We don't want it to die.
A council spokesperson for Sevenoaks District Council said, "We are currently consulting on the new local plan, which includes potential locations for new homes to meet the government's significantly increased housing targets for the Sevenoaks District. The government has instructed us to identify land for 1,145 new homes every year, a 63% increase on the current target. While the new local plan proposes to make the best use of existing built-up areas, we'll have to consider other sites to meet the government's housing target." Sevenoaks District Council's consultation, which includes 30 pop-up events, will close on the 11th of December. Maisie Walker for KMTV, Sevenoaks.
Well, Maisie joins us in the studio now. Tell us a little bit more about the plan.
So residents bought candles Tuesday evening to mourn the greenbelt sites across Sevenoaks that could be reclassified as a grey belt area. Grey belt refers to the lower quality green belt land that has been previously developed or does not strongly fulfil the green belt's main purposes. The reclassification would allow space for new developments, and on Tuesday evening when I went down, Sevenoaks District Council were actually meeting to discuss proposals to build more than 17,000 homes and a rugby stadium in the district by 2042. Protesters expressed concerns about transport links, local infrastructure and the need to protect greenbelt areas, which are home to wildlife and a range of ecosystems. The debate comes in response to the government's significantly increased local housing target of 17,175 new homes. This is the equivalent to about 1,145 homes per year, which is a 63% rise on the current requirement. Although the new local plan aims to prioritise development within existing built-up areas and on brownfield sites, changes to planning rules means that councils must also release greenbelt land in order to meet their housing targets. Failure to do so could result in planning inspectors rejecting the local plan. And alongside this, proposals linked to Wasps Rugby Football Club include a multi-purpose stadium complex with around 28,000 seats, training facilities and a hotel on nearby land within the M25, which is a part of a master plan which outlines space for sports, concerts, conferences and events.
So Sevenoaks could look very different in the coming decades. Just very quickly, what else were those protesters demonstrating about?
Well, the campaign leader, Sue Hurwitz, was actually there, who can tell us a little bit more about her worries.
We are swamped at the moment. I have recently not been able to get to the GP, which caused a big problem. And we cannot get enough GP cover anyway. So to put in these housing developments in spots like they are being put in is actually really dangerous for everybody. You know, it could kill people actually. And I think that what's happening is that we're not preserving what needs to keep people well. And that's really important. It's fine, we all need to have homes, that is really important as well. But what's important is how we have homes and where we have them in a place that if you're putting sites of 2,500 and not 3,000 or more, the provisions are far less, even though the take on the area is going to be extreme. You know, they're going to take a lot of the resources, but they're not actually going to be able to provide what people need.
Coming up, a Canterbury-based charity says the government has missed an opportunity to tackle homelessness as rough sleeping numbers reach a record high. All that and Finn McDermott with the sport in just a few moments' time. Welcome back to Kent Tonight. Now, reaction has been pouring in across Kent in response to the government's autumn budget announcement. Among the Chancellor's announcements are a freeze on income tax bands, a rise in minimum wage and a mansion tax. We spoke to Andrew Tate from Chatham-based accountants Cresson Reeves about the Chancellor's budget earlier on.
Well, I think that this was one of the biggest announcements, I think, from a policy point of view that she was bringing in. And certainly, I think, look, I think it's going to be a very welcome news, that the means testing is going to be lifted for families with more than 2 children. So I think it will be very welcome. I guess it'll be interesting to see what impact that has on welfare. She said that the previous reforms hadn't really held back welfare spending, so it'll be interesting, I think, to see in time how that manifests itself.
Yes, anything that can be done to prevent people from experiencing homelessness in the first place is welcome. But the fact is, there are too many people currently out on the street. I mean, I'll give you an example. Just this weekend, we were supporting a woman. She had nothing but a ripped up tent to protect her from the cold. Or we were talking to a 70-year-old man who literally had nothing at all. And obviously, we're doing our best to make sure that people are being kept safe. But we need a joined up national strategy to make sure that fewer people are in that situation.
2 men have been sentenced after an axe attack by the A2 near Canterbury left 1 man with near fatal injuries. Asmatullah Paktawal and Dawood Khan have been given a combined 48-year prison sentence after they tried to murder Nasrat Ahmadzai. During a trial at Canterbury Crown Court, it was heard the victims and defendants were involved in rival people smuggling operations, something each party denies. The incident happened in the early hours of December the 14th last year and stemmed from a turf war between the 2 groups. Both men will have to serve 2/3 of their sentence before being released on licence. Here's the moment Paktawal was caught on police camera.
What's your full name?
My name is Matla Paktawal.
Okay. At this moment in time, you're under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder. Okay. Section 18 GBH with intent. Okay. And for 2 times of possession of an offensive weapon in a public place. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later on in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence. Okay. So you're now under arrest. The reason why you've been arrested is to allow you to be interviewed about this and questioned in interview.
Next, it's been revealed upgrades to a busy roundabout near Sittingbourne are running 18 months behind schedule. Works on the Grovehurst roundabout off the A249 is also more than £250,000 over budget. They were due to be completed in June last year, but KCC's contractor Jackson Civil Engineering said it will not be finished until the new year. The authority has had to announce 3 times that the scheme would not be completed when it had hoped. Now MP for Sittingbourne and Sheppey, Kevin McKenna, has called on KCC to pursue the contractors for financial compensation. Now it's time to take a look at the sport from around the county with Finn McDermott.
Well, for your first story, Gareth Ainsworth is bracing himself for a return to his former club Shrewsbury Town with the Gills after swapping clubs last season. Shrewsbury ended up relegated and have struggled in the 4th tier, having only collected 4 wins in 17 outings this season. And Ainsworth says he expects to be given quite a bit of stick at the away fixture. He added, "I enjoyed my time there. I'm very respectful of the fans that got right behind us and had some great results." The Gills currently sit at 7th, while Shrewsbury are treading water down at 22nd. Next to cricket, and Kent's county season fixtures for the Championship Division 2 have been announced. The summer will start with a lengthy trip beginning in Durham on Friday, April 3rd, before the reverse fixture from Friday, May 15th. The match will be the 10th county championship match to be held at Beckenham since 1954. Kent's acting chief executive, Nimmo Reid, said, "With another packed schedule of cricket on the horizon, we're excited by the prospect of bringing the Rothesay County Championship back to Beckenham." Now over to Maidstone United, where manager George Elokobi is going a bit against the grain in football, and he's not blaming recent poor form on injuries. The Stones have been seeing mixed results for the National League South season and have most recently suffered back-to-back defeats. They chalked up a 2-1 loss to Enfield and a 3-1 result against Dorking at the weekend. Another loss there with a squad lacking key players, including their usual captain, Sam Corn. El Kobe, who's also missing a centre-back, full-back, left-winger and a midfielder due to injury, said we have to make sure we trust the ones that are available. They've got to go out and help the football club and help themselves to win matches. And finally, Gillingham's local ice hockey side, Invicta Dynamos, hope to extend a run of good results after a 2-week break. The Mo's last outing was away to Cardiff Fire, recording an 11-2 win. And coming up, they'll start their weekend at home against bottom-of-the-table Romford Buccaneers on Saturday. Head coach Carl Lennon credits their success to making sure the players kept working over the break rather than take time off, which he said was a decision made by the players. He said, unlike maybe in previous years, we would typically give them a week off for recuperation, the boys wanted to remain training. And that's all for your Sports Bulletin.
Now don't forget you can keep up to date with all your latest stories across Kent by logging on to our website kmtv.co.uk. There you'll find all our reports, including this one about St Martin's Hospital's new summer house to help their patients' mental wellbeing in Canterbury.
While we're all in the thick of autumn, St Martin's Hospital is aiming to bring some sunshine to its patients here in Canterbury. Together with Red Row, they've just revealed a brand new summer house, complete with activities designed to help patients relax and de-stress.
This new summer house has all sorts of activities to help patients relax, from painting, yoga, to just having a good conversation.
So this is a great resource. It's one that we've been really needing for a long time. It's something that we couldn't do on our own, and working in partnership with Red Row has allowed us to get this opportunity so people can come here, patients and staff can come here for art therapy, for meditation, for yoga, which is outside of their normal wards that they're being treated in, to really grab that opportunity to do something different while they're with us.
Well, we would absolutely love for it to be expanded upon, but the project this itself has been an incredible success. I mean, right from the very conception of the project and all the way through, it's been a pleasure to work on. Red Row have been so much fun to have alongside us. The patients have really enjoyed seeing it being built as well. They've really enjoyed seeing everyone at work and having chats with people and just having the time of their lives. And we've had the time of our lives working with them too.
And of course, there are plans to make use of this new facility in the new year.
So I think it provides a space for them to actually have time to themselves. I mean, clearly, you know, when the weather's better, they can come down here. They can use it, to chat. They can have events down here, which they've talked about to us, next year. They've talked about having Halloween events here and some events here as well. And I think it's just a great space for the patients here.
With Christmas closing in, St Martin's Hospital and Red Row are determined to help patients beat the winter blues. Henry Luck for KMTV in Canterbury.
Speaking of winter blues, it's a bit of a dreary one tonight. Rain everywhere except for Dover and Margate. Temperatures around 13 degrees. Tomorrow morning looks a bit brighter, 9 degrees and sunny in the west. Slightly warmer with some clouds in the east, 11 degrees in Dover. In the afternoon, quite quick winds of 14 miles per hour. Only Margate and Dover seeing some sun. And for the rest of your week, it's rain on Saturday and Monday. Looking a bit drier but colder on Sunday. A cafe in Broadstairs is bringing elderly visitors together through the power of music. The new Old Bakehouse hosts Bonkers Wednesdays to let customers play instruments, which encourage them to socialise with others. The owner of the cafe says this is important to help visitors overcome feelings of isolation, as Henry Luck reports.
The new Old Bakehouse in Broadstairs serves something more than coffee and pastries. Every week, the cafe hosts Bonkers Wednesday, where customers can come down to make music and some new friends.
As well as coffee, this cafe is also known for producing a lot of friendship and music.
I've been here for 2 years, and I started off the Bonkers Wednesday as a little bit for the community and to bring a little bit of joy, because there's a lot of doom and gloom in this world.
These sessions aim to help elderly visitors overcome feelings of isolation which can often come up later in life.
They brought a lot of joy to my life. I came here on my own. I didn't know anyone, and there's seven or eight of us. We're really happy and friendly. We meet up every morning at 8 o'clock, and we just have fun.
My wife died 2 years ago, so I was feeling down, and this has livened up my life. I come here, as I say, every morning. We all know each other, we all muck in together, and we just have a lovely time and a laugh.
I must say it's a pleasure being down here. We've got a good team down here, and Maria goes beyond and whatever it is, above and beyond to please everybody. And I love her to bits, and I love them all. Oh, don't I cry!
With winter already upon us, this group is determined to make sure the beat goes on. Henry Luck for KMTV in Broadstairs.
Join us for more on Kent Tonight after the break. See you shortly. Hello and welcome back to Kent Tonight, live on KMTV. I'm Cameron Tucker. Let's take another look at your top stories from across Kent. Cross at County Hall, we have the KCC leaders' scathing reaction to the government's budget. Save Our Green Belt candlelit march shines light on Sevenoaks housing plans. And Everyone's Welcome, Broadstairs Cafe hosts music sessions to help the elderly struggling with loneliness. A look back at our top story. Parents should use contraception to prevent having children they can't afford. That's been one of the damning remarks made by Kent County Council leader Lyndon Kemp-Carron in response to the government's budget. It comes as the Chancellor said that the two-child benefit would be scrapped next year, believing that the current system punishes the most vulnerable children. But the leader of KCC said the move will just be irritating to local authorities who are trying to balance the books. Our reporter George Walker spoke to her earlier.
Well, I thought Halloween, had been and gone, but I think yesterday was a complete horror show. I think the Chancellor is hopelessly out of her depth. I think this is typical Labour politics. They think that by splashing loads of taxpayers' cash on public spending, they will somehow stimulate growth. Anybody who has spent any time in the real world, and I mean the real world outside of Westminster, will know that growth only comes from the private sector. Growth comes when you cut red tape around SMEs, you encourage people to take risks, you encourage entrepreneurs to pour their own time, money and effort into making things from the ground up. That budget yesterday was all about punishing people who actually go out to work and earn money and pay taxes, to take that money and give it to people who are not in work. Also, the illegal migrant situation is just being allowed to continue completely unchecked. The government like to boast that they're taking illegal migrants out of hotels. Great on paper. Where are they putting them? They're putting them into the private rental sector. That is going to have an even bigger effect on our already desperate housing crisis in this country. It was, in short, an absolute shower.
But don't you think things like lifting the two-child benefit cap, that's going to help people who are, in high levels of poverty? And don't you think that could help sort of alleviate some of the pressures on services for, maybe perhaps homelessness or general things across Kent? You don't think some of those proposals could help?
No, I think all that's going to do is really irritate the people like me who have made the decision very early on to only have the number of children that I can afford to feed, clothe, educate, give a decent standard of lifestyle to. There are so many people like me who have made that very hard choice to have one or maybe two children because that's all you can reasonably afford. Those people are going to be feeling quite annoyed that there are loads of other people out there who are not taking responsible decisions about managing the size of their family. Contraception is freely available to everybody in this country. There is no excuse for having more children than you can afford to bring up. We need to get real about this. We need to get real. We cannot keep throwing money at people who are not making the good choices.
But I mean, I don't have the stats to hand, but as far as I understand, it would lift a lot of people out of poverty, a lot of families. And also in terms of children, I mean, they don't choose to be born into a certain family, right? So it's not their fault. That's going to help their families perhaps develop more of a sort of some solidity in terms of their finances and things like that. Don't you think that would, is it not unfair, unfair on the children in this
Of course it's unfair on the children. Of course, no child asks to be born, no child asks to be sent to school without being given breakfast or in a uniform that's not clean. No child asks for that. You're absolutely right, and no, children should not suffer. But don't you think it is kinder and more sustainable to look at the root of the problem rather than just throwing money at it? We need to be asking parents, are you aware of your responsibilities as a parent? It is your responsibility to get your child up in the morning, feed them breakfast, get them clothed and get them to school on time. That is parenting 101. That is the basic duty of a parent. We need to be reminding parents, if you choose to have children, you are responsible for their welfare, for their upkeep and getting them to school.
Next, a 23-year-old bin man with terminal cancer was brought to tears after his colleagues surprised him with an unforgettable gesture at his wedding in Dover. Stephen Adley fulfilled one of his final wishes by marrying his fiancée Hannah with her 1-year-old daughter by their side. In October, he was given devastating news that he had only months to live, just 3 weeks after proposing. His colleagues at Viola surprised him with a convoy of bin lorries to escort him to the ceremony at Bluebirds on Sunday. The wedding was made possible thanks to the generosity of local businesses. There are calls for safety improvements to the A21 Tunbridge bypass after an accident due to surface water. Data shows in the last 4 years there's been 8 crashes within a 300-metre radius. One driver died at the scene last year. A spokesperson for National Highways says safety remains their top priority, adding they regularly inspect and sweep the route to ensure that the surface water is draining from the carriageway. Conor Hardy is calling for action to prevent further crashes. Earlier, he told us more about the moments leading up to the incident.
It had been raining really quite heavily. When I came out of the gym, it had just stopped raining. There was a bit of blue sky appearing. So the road was quite wet. But, you know, not to the point where I thought it was dangerous. So, you know, I continued on my way down, came over the Medway flyover, and then I was on the inside lane behind another car, and I had quite a low profile car, so it wasn't like an SUV where you can see the road ahead. So I was in the inside lane, I got caught up and I pulled out to overtake, hit the accelerator to do the overtaking because there was actually another BMW behind me, and that's when suddenly I saw I didn't really see the flood on the road. The next thing I know is the car was, you know, fishtailing and then sideways, and then I smashed into the barrier.
Swale and Medway are among the areas set to benefit from £250 million in Sport England funding. The investment into deprived areas in the South East is in a bid to get people moving. It comes as Sport England warns of an inactivity crisis that is impacting entire communities, especially children. As a result, it is fueling long-term illness, poorer mental health and reduces life chances. Lisa Dodd, Main from the organisation, spoke to us earlier on.
So we know that where you live very much depends on the opportunities you have. And even further than that some people have a life expectancy which is 7 to 10 years shorter than other people. And that's just not fair. So what we want to do with this investment, we want to invest in places up and down the country to give everybody that same opportunity to be active. So today we're announcing 27 new places, some of which are in active Kent and Medway, and investing a total of £250 million over the life of this programme across England to genuinely work in a very, very different way. You mentioned the inactivity crisis, and this has been going on for decades, and we know we need to do something differently now. And that something differently is not a national organisation like Sport England telling communities what to do, but very much about co-creating, working bottom up with those local communities to understand the challenges that they face, and then look at where we can put activities, initiatives in place to really help that.
Well, Invicta Sports' Finn McDermott here to tell us about the impact of this funding here in Kent.
Yeah, as you said, Cam, they've highlighted 27 areas across the country that are particularly inactive or that need have a certain level of deprivation, and unfortunately Swale and Medway were included in that list under the South East. They've mentioned some statistics here that in the poorest areas 1 in 3 people are inactive versus 1 in 5 in more wealthy areas. Including in these areas, life expectancy gaps can be up to 14 years, and more than 500,000 children say they don't feel like they belong in their area. And like I say, 250 million are split across those areas. We don't know exactly where that's going. That's up to people in those individual areas across Sport England. But I have some numbers here. For Medway, it says that there's a 10-year life expectancy gap within 4 miles, and that 46.8% of children are inactive with extremely high obesity levels. And it's similar numbers in Swale. They say there's severe deprivation in the Isle of Sheppey with a child inactivity rate of 45%. And a lot of obesity there as well. So there's a lot of issues that they're trying to tackle with this huge amount of funding. But like I say, that is spread out across the country. But they say there is a source of hope that more than half of young children and young people surveyed show that by being active, by being part of a sports club, that it really can have a positive effect on mental health, inclusivity and just a feeling of belonging in these areas as well. It makes children more connected and feel more comfortable in their area.
Finn, thank you very much for coming in with that. And finally, calls from across Kent and the country have increased for the introduction of screening for prostate cancer in high-risk men. It comes as earlier this week, former Prime Minister Lord David Cameron revealed that he's been treated for prostate cancer. We spoke with Kent resident Paul Dennington, who's been campaigning for a screening programme.
Obviously, I was diagnosed aged 55 and I was caught too late. So I'm stage 4 and incurable. And who knows, with the benefit of a screening programme, I could have been caught in time. And that's the key issue, because if you catch people in time, it's very treatable in its early stages, but it rarely comes with symptoms, hence the need for some kind of test or screening programme. My thoughts on the decision to come is I'm waiting with kind of bated breath, but not with a lot of hope, to be honest. I think the word out there on the kind of in the community is that it probably won't, it'll be a no still, on the basis there is insufficient evidence to drive a full screening programme.
We're just going to go to a short break, but after the break we'll be hearing from a Canterbury mountaineer as he gets ready for the final part of his 7th Summit Challenge. We'll also be joined by our KMTV film expert Chris Deasy as we discuss all things Stranger Things, as the first part of the final season has been released today. And for those who've moved on from the horror movie genre and getting into the festive mood as we near December, he'll be telling us about what movies he's been watching in the run-up to Christmas. We'll see you very shortly. Hello and welcome back to Kent Tonight, live here on KMTV. Canterbury mountaineer Harry Buddha-McGar is getting ready to complete the final part of his 7 Summits Challenge. The mission involves climbing the highest mountain on each of the 7 continents. Harry lost both his legs while serving in Afghanistan with the British Army's Gurkha Regiment. Now he's about to scale Mont Vinsoon in Antarctica. Here he is.
So Antarctica is one of the most, it's the coldest, it's the driest, it's the windiest continent. And going up the mountain, it's more windy. So the cold would be a huge obstacle. But, you know, I think we are prepared for that. So we'll be able to tackle that. Hopefully weather will favor us and we'll have some decent weather. Because if weather is bad on the mountain, how small the mountain simply it's not safe to go.
All the best to Harry. Now, don't forget, you can keep up to date with all your latest stories across Kent by logging on to our website, kmtv.co.uk. There you'll find all our reports, including this one about plans for a hotel and resort at the London Golf Club in Sevenoaks.
Kent is set to have a new 5-star resort, combining a 240-room hotel, spa, wedding venue, lodges and a driving range at the London Golf Club. This all comes after confirming it with councils, and the project is estimated to cost hundreds of millions of pounds. The idea was started with the Sevenoaks Club's bid for the 2035 Ryder Cup, and while the course has already hosted European Opens and World Match Plays, the resort would make the course and venue more suited for the international tournament and for other large events.
It's a venue potentially of national significance, but it's of Kentish significance as well. So, as you said, from weddings to... We as a venue currently hold 400 events a year. You know, those events run from weddings, party nights, golf days, car launches, board meetings. We're just looking to upscale that to become a venue that would then add internationals to that. So at the moment, we're almost a day-to-day facility. We'd like to extend ourselves into becoming more of a longer stay venue and a meeting venue, a conference venue, an international, and somewhere that could stage international events.
Right now I'm at hole 3 of the Heritage course, and just behind me is where the hotel will be built. 240 rooms complete with a spa, lodges, a sports pavilion and a driving range. But how are we going to get from a picturesque par 3 to a premier golfing destination?
The hotel is on this lovely slope of the land. It's got a spectacular view of the golf course, and we thought rather than plonking a building on there, if we could simply sort of terrace the landscape and use the building to sort of fold over the roof, and that informed the architecture, so then it could age like a landscape would age rather than a building, and then that kind of set the narrative for the other buildings across the site, that maybe they could feel like a family of buildings rather than just a series of plonked buildings.
This all comes alongside recent developments in the area, as the course is near Brands Hatch and Millwall's training ground in West Kingsdown, creating a strategic sports corridor along the M20. The site also contains a Grade 2 star-listed building that will be converted into a wedding venue for the development, and there's also plans for a sports pavilion, including paddle courts, a gym, a restaurant and an open water swimming lake. The club hope they can welcome the community of customers by 2028, by which point both golfers and holidaymakers can enjoy the resort, whether they're there for rest and relaxation or for a round on the range. Finn McDermott for KMTV in Sevenoaks.
And now for a look at the weather. Well, tonight it's a bit of a dreary one. Rain everywhere except for Dover and Margate. Temperatures of 13 degrees across the county. Tomorrow morning looks a bit brighter, 9 degrees and sunny in the west. Slightly warmer with some cloud in the east, highs of 11 degrees in Dover. In the afternoon, quite quick winds of 14 miles per hour. Only Margate and Dover seeing some sun. Ashford looking pretty cold at 11 degrees. For the rest of the week, it's going to be rainy on Saturday. It'll be picking up a bit on Sunday, not in temperature degrees though. Monday, rain will be returning. And as ever on a Thursday, we have Kent Film Club's Chris Deasy here to unpack all the biggest headlines. Now, We're deviating slightly this week. Normally have you talking about all the movies and the movie magic. We're going to the smaller screen though. The phenomenon that is Stranger Things. After 3 years of waiting, first part of the final series or season rather, it's that's what they call it in America, isn't it? Is out. Can you give us a bit of a brief overview of this phenomenon?
Well, I can, because it came out at 1 o'clock in the morning, and there were reports of people setting their alarm even before going to school or getting up at 5 o'clock this morning to watch this season. And of course, it's being unveiled with various episodes coming out up until Christmas and New Year. Now, it's 1980 set. Now, you're right, because it is a deviation in the sense that it's not a film, strictly speaking. However, Empire Review, all the film magazines and journals are reviewing this, and it is a total phenomenon. I mean, I think the age has gone where we can simply say this is a film, this is a TV show. It used to be the case with the Oscars that, famously Linda Fiorentino wasn't nominated for a film, The Last Seduction, in the mid-90s because it had its premiere on TV. And then in more recent years, Roma won an Academy Award for Best Picture, Best Director, and it was a Netflix series. So I think we are in an age now where this sort of phenomenon works. Small screen, big screen, it really has crossover appeal.
And with Stranger Things in particular, not just on the small screen as well, but we've seen that it's been adapted onto the London stage as well. The Duffer Brothers really having that, that piece of history, that setting there, taken to loads of different kinds of media. And, ever since it came out, that 80s nostalgia has been so central to the success of the show. What is it about that period that cinema viewers, TV viewers, now stage theatre goers, what is it that keeps drawing us back to that time period?
Well, this, I think, is crystallised by the film Donnie Darko, because I remember this era. I know Winona Ryder's in this, and of course we associate her with films from that period, like Beetlejuice in the late 80s. Now, this is an era, anybody like me who grew up in that decade will remember what it was like to be at school.
I wasn't going to remind you.
No, well. But when you look back at these films, you see there's something very visceral. Stephen King's It as well, the one that came out in 2017, did it completely. Because this was an age before social media. And it was an age when you'd have to queue up to get your records or cassettes, and people would have their Walkmans on. And you watch all those horror films like Nightmare on Elm Street, which have had a rerun in recent years, especially with Halloween just last month. And when you're watching this, you are transported back into that era. And it feels strangely innocent because we didn't have the smartphones that we have today. We didn't have Facebook. But when you're watching this, you also see that there was a lot of menace because we didn't have apps that would say, be careful, there's somebody behind you, turn around and press this button and call the police or whatever. So in a way, there's an innocence, but also a sense of mystery and suspense. And it feels so, it's 40 years old, but this period, what is it, between 83 and 87 are the years that Stranger Things is set in. And I think it feels close, but also very foreign.
And something that I'm really fascinated by is there's a real sort of soft spot a lot of people have for the 80s. I mean, I wasn't even born in the 80s, but I love the 80s music, I love the 80s films, and there's a real soft spot a lot of people have for this period. But politically, socially, it was quite a disruptive time as well. So where is that kind of disconnect? Why is that disconnect there?
And you see it with films that are based around, like Billy Elliot, the miners' strike of 1984-85. And in a way, these are films that are nostalgic in their appeal, the music from the era. But also, as you say, it was a time when the country was very discordant and was very much at odds with itself and torn apart. And I think that's also part of it, that actually it's the counterpoint and the counterpart. You can have the two together. We can feel nostalgic for an age when we weren't necessarily very happy, but it was also the music or the movies that enabled us to get through it all. And when we hear them, watch those films and listen to those songs, we're reminded that actually we survived. I will survive, although that was technically end of the 70s.
Now, a bit of a gear change to another seasonal period of films. One that you are most definitely an expert in. We've got here Christmas Karma, one of the latest Christmas films out. We've also, what I want to kind of talk about is more those sort of Hallmark movies, those sort of rom-coms you get at this time of year, that have really, really found a niche and really taken hold of the public in the last few years especially. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, totally. Well, Christmas Karma you mentioned. Now, I went in with some trepidation. I saw this on the weekend because it had terrible reviews. But and how many iterations have we had of the Scrooge story? And of course, for me, The Muppets is the definitive one. But this one, I have to say, first 10 minutes, you see Danny Dyer in a taxi cab singing, and I thought, oh, there's a grime-filled rap about the cost of living crisis, and I thought, oh, this could really not work. From the director, Bend It Like Beckham. After 20 minutes, I was sobbing because it's the lead character here is a British Asian. His family moved from Uganda in the 1960s and the 70s. And experiencing prejudice in the 80s. Back to what we were just saying actually about the 1980s. And that explains him and why he is sceptical of Christmas, why he prioritises money and doesn't get close to people. So I thought it was a really well-developed Scrooge story that was updated. So with that sort of Ugandan backstory, no one else has done anything like this. And a lot of it, of course, was very twee, and a lot of it was very, it has all the ingredients that make Christmas films either wonderful or terrible. But I came away, and to be sobbing, maybe it's my age, but actually sobbing while watching this film. So for me, it was a wonderful blend, Christmas karma. It worked almost in spite of itself.
And we've only got about a minute left before the end of the show. Just give us an idea of some of those tropes that we see in those, Christmas Carol renditions, all those Hallmark movies.
Absolutely, and they're always about family. Now, often, like Jingle All the Way is another example, but those Hallmark films, they always involve family. They involve relationships. Now, there may be a consumerist backdrop. They always go to these big department stores. Think of Arnie getting that big turbo toy for his son. But at the end of it, it's somebody expressing, albeit through money, through commercial transactions, love for somebody close to them. And that, in a way, is what Christmas is about, because